All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Selamat datang. How are you doing? So it's Learning Fest, right? Yeah, lots of learning, and also you got to meet your KPIs, right? So, you got to do what you got to do to survive. So it's a pleasure to be here. I'm really excited. I've been looking forward to this event for a long time. And I'm really excited to work with a company like ASTRO to present to you people because you're smart, you're fresh, you're young, you get it, right? And young in terms of mindset, by the way, right? Not the numbers, it's how the brain thinks, yeah? Okay. And what I want to present to you about is something that I'm really passionate about, which is what we call the innovation shift, okay? And my role today is to serve the innovation shift to you in a way that I hope you find relevant, I hope you find exciting, and also maybe a little bit scary, right? Because I think it is a little bit scary. And there's no point presenting something that's just going to make you fall asleep, right? Because then you can just do that at home. So if we're going to be here, we might as well do something that's alive and exciting. Do you agree? Yes? Boom, right? So just to give you a little bit of background about myself and who I am and what I represent, I am a co-founder of Leadapreneur with my wonderful partner and wife, Jessica, at the back. Jess, give us a wave. So this is Jess, and we're a duo. We're the co-founders of Leadapreneur, like I said, and we've been working together for 10 years across a lot of countries around the world, talking about this innovation shift, basically. We've worked with many companies you'll recognize up here. We work with a lot of famous and local universities around the world, and also with a lot of youth organizations, because one of the most important things to recognize is the innovation shift is driven by Gen Y, right, and beyond. Now looking at Gen Z. So that's going to be a critical aspect because we've taken a lot of our insights from this emerging generation. And as you can see, we've worked with a lot of leaders around the world, over 30,000, to gain these insights. So Europe, the Americas, and Asia. But you also want to know a little bit about me. I feel that if you're going to present something, you should share a little bit of your soul with people. So this is me. My motto is to be bold. I'll touch on that in a minute. My name is Bartscht. I'm from Germany originally. My parents are German, but I was born in London. Right, so I grew up in London. So I'm a true Anglo-Saxon, okay? Like, I am the real deal, okay? And my job is to basically, hopefully, get the combination right, okay? German efficiency, British humor, right? Not the other way around, okay? Because German humor and British efficiency wouldn't work as well, okay? So I'm gonna try and get that right. And to help me do that, there's some things you might want to know, learn about me. So I'm an Iron Man, not the Marvel Iron Man, but a true Ironman. So an Ironman is someone who's completed the Ironman race, which is a 3.8 kilometer swim in the ocean, 180 kilometer bike ride, and then a 42 kilometer marathon. It takes nearly 14 hours, and well, for me at least, right? Others do it much faster than me. And so I share that with you to kind of show the kind of spirit about what I think I'm about. Like, I think doing an Ironman is a crazy, crazy thing to do, right? My parents were literally like, why, right? Why don't you just stay at home, right? And I think it's about going beyond. I think doing things like the Ironman, doing these difficult things is about striving for something higher, something more, going beyond your comfort zone. So I'm definitely someone who likes to go out of my comfort zone. I'm also a total geek, right? So my field of scientific expertise is called cybernetics. It's the science of communication and control. And that's where I've published some papers and some peer-reviewed journals on that subject. And this is sort of my deep area of expertise, and it's the underlying science of the innovation shift. And then also, big gamer. I love playing games, right, on the PC mainly. And so that's just for a little bit of fun. And so what I want to basically share with you is this spirit of being bold. And the reason we need to be bold is because right now, across the world, the equivalent of this is happening, right? The age of disruption is arriving. Okay, now, what this presentation is going to be about is introducing to you the age of disruption and helping you understand what that relates to in terms of your role in your company and where you might take it forward into the future. But the basic idea is this. The age of disruption is happening because we're moving from the industrial age to the information age, right? That's basically what's driving it, okay? But it's going to affect every aspect of all parts of our lives, right? And just because you are an information company, someone like ASTRO, that doesn't mean you're in the information age. And that's something we're going to be talking about, because it's not actually the products you produce, it's the way in which you run the company. And one of the things we're going to discover is using industrial ways of running the company, the management structure, is not as effective as it needs to be in the modern day world. So let's see what this all means in a sort of a hard science aspect. So the American military coined this term called VUCA, Has anyone heard of VUCA before? Yes, a few yeses, right? So it was coined in the 1990s to describe a new kind of warfare. A warfare in which it's no longer the traditional big armies fighting each other. It's crazy, fighting terrorists, fighting these small bunch of people. We don't know how to beat them, right? So what basically VUCA means is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Volatility means things can change very quickly overnight, right? Uncertainty means that you don't know what's going to happen in the future. It's very difficult to predict the future, right? And it's interesting to think that the smartest people on this planet don't know what's going to happen in the next year, let alone the next 5 years, right? And Brexit is a great example of that, for example. Ambiguity is different to uncertainty in that it's the uncertainty of the present. So ambiguity means you don't even know what's happening right now. Are we doing well as a company or are we not, right? We might think we are, but is that just an illusion? And of course, complexity means about how we connect the world together, right? And how many moving parts are really interacting through dynamic relationships. So the key point is this. We live in a VUCA reality. Do you guys agree with that? Or do you think we live in a simple world? VUCA? Sounds good? I hope you say yes, because otherwise we're in trouble for the rest of the presentation, right? So I'm going to take this as a yes, right? So the point is this, right? In a world that is increasingly VUCA, that means globalized, fast-moving, uncertain, the old rules no longer apply. Just because you've been a manager for the last 30 years, or 20 years, doesn't mean you're going to be successful in the future anymore. Because your old thinking habits, your experiences of how we do things around here are less and less relevant. They are less and less relevant because of this VUCA reality. And this is part of what is driving the innovation shift. Just because the senior leaders have 30 years of experience doesn't mean that's relevant to the next 10 years. And this is one of the most important insights to understand. And in fact, that experience, I think, becomes a problem. Because if you're thinking about how the world was in the 1980s, you are decades behind how the world is going to be right now, and in the future. And so this is the basic problem. And so to serve you well as an audience, this is my approach to the presentation for the next 2 hours. Basically, there's the opportunity to present and give you guys just some blah, blah, blah. But I think that what really matters, what is really valuable at a Learning Fest, is to take the no bullshit approach. To give you guys what I think is really going on in the world today, because there's no point you leaving this event, ticking a box and saying thank you very much, right? You might as well just watch a video online. If you're going to be here with me, let's keep it real, right? And let's really talk about what's going on in the world. Does that sound cool? Yeah? We're happy with that? Excellent. So to start with, we must, of course, start with my passion, gaming, right? And in a game called Civilization, anyone played Civilization? Yes, you guys rock, right? So you know what I'm talking about. So basically, Civilization is a game where you start about 10,000 years ago, and you start with a small tribe, and you have to build a city and build an empire all the way into the near future, right? And you win the game by conquering the world or building a spaceship and going to another planet, right? That's the basic game. Very cool. Now, in this game, right, sometimes it happens that you think you're doing really well, okay? You've got these kind of knights, and you think you've got this really badass emperor, and suddenly, out of nowhere on your map, a tank arrives, right? And at this point, you're like, oh my God, what? What is, right? Because you're walking around with tanks and archers, and your opponents have a tank, right? Guess who wins? The tank, right? It's not a trick question, right? The tank will always win, right? No matter how many movies we watch, right? And so this is basically how to understand disruption, okay? Disruption means that something suddenly arrives that is so overwhelmingly superior, you're going to lose. That is basically what disruption is about, okay? When the collision of two forces come together where there's overwhelming odds in one party's favor. And this is an age in which we're coming into right now. And here, ladies and gentlemen, are what I think are some of the disruptors to your reality today as ASTRO. So I want to introduce some of them to you. The thing that I'd like to share with you is that these disruptors are driven by Gen Y. Okay, they are not your traditional Gen X market demographic, right? This is Gen Y led. But Gen Y today are 70% of ASEAN, right? And by 2020 will be the majority of people in the workforce and the majority of customers in ASEAN. So has anyone heard of Twitch? Put your hand up if you've heard Twitch. Okay, 2 people. Twitch is the #1 media source for teenage boys globally. It is a platform to watch other people play computer games. That's what it is, right? You log in and it's like watching a YouTube video, but it's live of someone, doing whatever they want to do in the game. It was bought by Amazon for $960 million a few years ago, okay? Twitch is what your future demographic is playing. And they are not going to watch TV, right? They are not going to subscribe to your local shows. They are going to be watching people playing computer games on Twitch, right? So already, your entire future market segment has gone somewhere else. Does Astro even have something like Twitch? Doesn't seem like it does, right? iFlix, I'm sure you're all familiar with iFlix right now. Yeah? iFlix, what is their strategy? Work with the telcos. Get into every home. Build the platform, right? Because Gen Y aren't interested in sitting in front of a TV. I want it on mobile, I want it where I want, how I want, when I want, okay? And this is where iFlix is able to do. It's not just about the content, it's about the ability to get it anywhere, anytime, how I want it. YouTube, of course, we're all familiar with, but are we familiar with the YouTube star? The fact that the modern celebrities for the Gen Y are YouTube stars, live casters. Have you heard of PewDiePie? No one's heard of PewDiePie? He is the most followed person on YouTube in the planet. 60 million people follow his channel, right? That's more than twice in Malaysia. Follow the channel of a mid-20s age Scandinavian man. He is the celebrity of the future, right? Virtual reality. This is an Oculus Rift that's bought by Facebook for $2 billion a few years ago. Wired magazine believes that the largest companies in the next decade will be the virtual reality companies because there is a whole new platform that is going to emerge, right? Augmented reality, something like Pokemon, is just the beginning. Building virtual reality worlds is where people are going to go, right? In 10 years' time, you're not going to watch TV, right? You're going to be using virtual reality devices to access your own world. Because the problem with TV is it's not individualized to my reality. Why do people play so many games? Because it's my game, it's my journey, I'm the hero. Quick spot check. What is bigger? The music industry, the movie industry, or the gaming industry? How much more? Right? Globally today, gaming is about a $100 billion industry. Movies is about 60, music is about 15. Right? Do you know what the fastest growing sport in the world is today? Esports. Right? The whole younger generation are moving to a completely different platform, right? It's not like you're competing with another broadcaster. You're competing with something you have nothing in, right? You have literally, there's nothing. There's nothing. These are the platforms that gamers use today. Steam is for PC. It's basically like Netflix for gaming. You can think of it like that, right? That's Steam. And this is from Blizzard. Have you guys heard of World of Warcraft? It's quite a famous game, right? So Blizzard make World of Warcraft. They've released a new game called Overwatch. Do you know how many people play Overwatch now? In the last 6 months, they've signed up? 30 million people. 30 million people are playing this game regularly. Their biggest game, called Hearthstone, which is a digital card game you play, basically, has 50 million regular users. 50 million regular users, right? So you're competing with that, right? You're competing with that. It's not saying, oh, those are games with TV. It's attention, right? You're competing for attention. And then, of course, we have Netflix, right? The gorilla in the room, right? The big boy, who suddenly announced their strategy of saying, we're global overnight. That must have been a bit of a surprise, right? And so this is just to say, guys, this is just the beginning, right? These are the guys who just exist here right now. And if we think about it, in a globalized world, in a VUCA reality, most of these companies have come from America, right? That's just one, should we call it country, continent generating. In the next decade, it's going to be China, it's going to be India, it's going to be Indonesia, it's going to be Brazil, it's going to be Russia, generating the equivalent of these guys, right? And that is the issue. How is ASTRO going to compete with that? And how are you going to do that fast enough? This is what it means to exist in the age of disruption. And I'm going to be, again, in the spirit of keeping it really honest and real, let's not worry about the company, let's worry about your jobs. Right? I'm not worried about ASTRO, right? Okay? How are you going to go forward in this? Right? How are you going to make sure that you're able to keep earning, providing for your family, leading yourself forward? And that is going to be one of the really big issues that is going to be emerging, right? So what I want to do is I want to take you on a journey to understand a little bit more this phenomena of disruption. Because it's very important to understand it because people misunderstand it. So to do that, we're going to go back in time. Because disruption has been happening across the millennia, just in different forms. And one of the most disruptive forces to ever exist in human history were the Mongols. Has anyone heard of the Mongols? Right? The Mongols started as a bunch of horse farmers in the middle of the Mongolian steppe. Has anyone been to Mongolia? No? I've been to Mongolia. There's nothing. All right? They call it the Sea of Grass. Right? Imagine if you're in the middle of the ocean. That's like Mongolia, but it's just waves of grass. And not like thick, lush grass, but like really tough, horrible grass. Right? And out of this became one of the most transformationally disruptive forces on the planet. They built the world's largest land empire, from Korea to Poland. Right? And the only reason they didn't conquer Japan is because they got lucky twice. 2 hurricanes came along and sunk the Mongolian fleet. Mongolia paid tribute to the Malaysia paid tribute to the Mongolians. How were they able to do this? How were a bunch of horse farmers able to conquer not only China, but the Middle East, most of Europe, and subjugate borders beyond their control to pay them tribute because they were so scary? And it's very simple. They had a really, really good strategy. They were just much faster than everyone else. Their army was a horse archer army. So they had basically all their soldiers were on horses. And not just one horse, but you had 4 horses. You know why? Because your horse gets tired, right? So if you're riding your horse, it gets tired. You just bring your second horse and you keep galloping away. And then you bring your 3rd horse, and then you bring your 4th horse. And by then, the other one's kind of recovered. And so you can do in a day what most armies couldn't do in a month. So when you can completely outmaneuver your opposition, how can they fight back? When you're on the battlefield, you have your normal soldiers and a few cavalry around. We have 50,000 horse archers firing 3 armor-piercing arrows a minute. That's 150,000 arrows a minute flying into your army. You're not going to last very long. And even if you do, you know what they did? They just run away. Restock, get new arrows, come back tomorrow. You couldn't even fight them. And this strategy of speed is what drove their ability to disrupt their opponents. They were just so much faster. And this is a key characteristic of disruption today. Because the Mongols of the 21st century is Uber, right? From nothing, and I kid you not, this is the founding story of Uber, 2 guys drunk in Paris who couldn't get a taxi, right? This is the real truth, to a $60 billion plus startup in about 5 years. That's speed. And you have changed the global transportation industry. Right? Interesting question. Why didn't the taxi firms invent Uber? That's something we'll come to later. But what I want to show, the first thing to understand about disruption is they are much faster than you. It's not a little bit faster, they are way faster than you. The speed at which Netflix and iFlix innovate is going to be much higher than the speed that ASTRO can innovate. So all things being equal, you're going to lose because they're faster. It's the first thing to understand. The second thing to understand is not just speed, but velocity. So I want to share with you the example of what exponential growth really means. Because I'm saying that you're moving fast. Okay, you're moving fast, so what? But it's not just you're moving fast, you're growing exponentially. If you look at these growth curves, that's an exponential growth curve, right? That's an exponential growth curve. So what does that mean? What does that mean in English? What it means is this. Let's take Kodak. You're all familiar with Kodak. Does anyone use Kodak today? No, right? Anyone have a GoPro? Weird, right? How does this guy, who was once the apple of their day, who made basically cameras, right, and digital stuff, die, and these guys, who also make cameras, are doing really well? How is that possible? Pardon? Innovation, exactly. But let's talk about the speed of innovation, right? Because let's take it like this. Once upon a time, Kodak owned the market. They were the 99% incumbent. And then a disruptor comes along, someone like a GoPro, but we could call them Instagram, we can call them anything, right? Not Kodak, basically. Takes 1% market share in year 1. Here's the question. How many years do you have as Kodak until you die, fighting an exponentially growing disruptor? How many years do you have until this guy kills you? Give me a number. 10, 20 years? 3 years? More aggressive? 1 year? No, not quite 1 year. That's a bit too fast. Pardon? 3 years. 3 years is also a little fast, but it's on the right lines. It's about 7 years. I'll show you. Let me show you, right? So year 1, someone sets up a disruptive company. Let's call it iFlix, right? Just to make things interesting. Year 2, they grab 2% market share. They're doubled in growth. The board at ASTRO haven't even heard of iFlix. Who? What? Irrelevant. We're 98% of the market. Year 3, it's 4%. These guys are pretty pleased with themselves. They're growing quite rapidly. So what? We're the giant. It's been 3 years. It's a long time, right? That's university. Right? Crazy, huh? Year 4. Now some ripples are starting to come on, right? iFlix is really gaining some traction. 8%, but come on, guys, it's nothing. It's been 4 years. They've been talking for so long, hyping themselves up. iFlix, they can't do anything. But the growth curve continues. Now things get a little bit exciting. 16% of the market share. It's year 5. And if you want to talk about tech disruption, year 5 seems to be, or round up, yeah, let's call it it's always about year 5. It's the magical transformation point from this to this. Yes. That's exponential growth. Yes. It doubles every year. Steve Jobs, when he launched the iPhone, said, I want 1% market share after the year, and then I want an exponential growth paradigm. And that's exactly what they did. So now it's been 6 years. And suddenly, people are worried. This is normally at the time when the board says, we should innovate. Everyone's like, yeah, they're high-fiving themselves. This is a good idea. We should do this, right? Okay, yeah, great. But here's the problem, right? The problem is your innovation velocity is terrible. Because these guys are growing exponentially, and you're doing this. And no matter how much money you throw at a problem, like innovation, you can't do this in 1 year. If you're a big company. It is impossible. And so you basically miss the point, which is the incumbent is going to keep losing, the disruptor is going to keep growing. It's too late. And then it's game over. Right? And this is the power of disruptive growth, which is basically means this. For 5 years, you notice nothing. And then you have basically the worst 3 years of your life. Right? And this is the same pattern we see again and again and again. If it's Airbnb, whether it's Uber, whether it's Instagram. Because here's the interesting thing about this kind of growth. It's not what you expect. Let me tell you a story. Has anyone heard of Napster? Napster was the original peer-to-peer network, right? It was awesome, right? You suddenly went from no music to lots of music. Magic, right? But here's the thing. Before Napster, nobody owned 10,000 songs, right? Did you? No, I definitely didn't, right? And I was like a 15-year-old kid, okay? I owned like 1 song, right? And so when you make something like an iPod, which can hold 10,000 songs, it's only relevant if you have a Napster. This is a really important point. The iPod only worked because we had Napster. If Napster and Kazaa had not been invented, no one would have bought the iPod because you don't own 10,000 songs, so why do you need to use that, right? So here's the story. Napster was invented, we all magically acquired 10,000 songs, and we needed to hold them somewhere so we could carry them around with us. So Apple invented the iPod. And then there's a point in your life, you may remember this, I do, when you have a camera, you have a phone, and you have a wallet, right? And an iPod, exactly. And so you're walking around like this, right? I was, right? Okay. But that's because my jeans were around here because I was trying to be really cool, right? And so someone smart comes along and says, why don't we just take those things and put them all together, right? And that's how the iPhone was born, right? Phone, camera, media player, and then also today, wallet, right? And when you have an iPhone, you get Instagram. And this is really what killed Kodak. Because when you have Instagram and digital photos and the whole ecosystem, you don't need Kodak. Google today, right? Google Photos gives you free unlimited storage for life for all your photos. So this is what killed Kodak. And so the point is that when we talk about this journey of accelerated disruption, it's not like you're saying, I know this guy is coming. You don't know who it is who's going to kill you. That's the problem. It can come from anywhere. And this is what's so difficult to deal with. If Kodak had known, hey, this was going to happen, maybe they would have been more focused on it. They didn't even think about it, right? And so this is a critical issue in terms of understanding disruption. It's going to come out of nowhere. Yes? How do they get funded? Because they're kind of comparing Kodak to Google. Yes. These guys are booted out because Google is coming, right? Yeah, in one way. So how do you can't get something for nothing? Yes. So can we come back to this question? Please don't forget it because it's actually really important later on. But so the question is, how does Google do that, right? How can they afford to do that? The simple answer is they have a superior ecosystem, right? By being engaged, by using Google Photos, they lock you into the Android platform. And if you're using Android, you're searching through Google, right? And so that way you're going to make money for them through advertising, right? And also, even more importantly, it's about owning the data. If you want to jump ahead, there's a phrase, data is the new oil, okay? Because if you have every photo on the planet, that's how you build artificial intelligence, right? You train an artificial intelligence. The way you build an artificial intelligence is you train it to recognize images, okay? You show it literally 500 million cat photos, and eventually it recognizes the pattern of a cat, right? And so now the thing can recognize a cat because a cat looks kind of like this. And you train the intelligence, and this is happening right now, by the way, right? This is happening. When your Facebook feed says, do you want to tag this person? That's Facebook AI. Because it's literally processing billions of photos a day and saying, this person looks like that, this person looks like that, this is a cat, this is a dog, this is whatever. And then if you think in 5 years into the future, we're going to have AI assistants, right? You're not going to be using apps in the future, right? You're going to have an AI assistant, and you're going to just say, assistant, please play me this movie. That's it, right? Recently at the Apple launch of the new iOS platform, they've integrated into banking. So there's a German bank that right now allows you to say, Siri, send $10 to my friend. And she'll say, do you want to send $10 to James Bloggs? And you say, yes, I do. Done. So that is really what's happening. These companies have it's not about photos, right? It's about the information ecosystem and owning that and monetizing it in different ways. But it's a great question, and we're going to come back to this. So, final point I'd like to make. Napster, first official build released in 2010. Instagram released, 2002, sorry. Instagram released in 2010. It's about 7 years. Right? So you're going to see the same pattern again and again and again. And for me, for the industry you're in, we're around about year 2, year 3. Right? I think Instagram, Netflix, iFlix, all these, it's just getting started. It's just the beginning. Right? And so the second thing we're now understanding about disruption is we know that they're very fast-moving. And I'm not trying to say fast, but I'm saying they have a superior innovation velocity. They will beat you on current trends, okay? You're going to lose. You're going to lose. The second thing to understand is extreme aggression. Another extremely disruptive force in human history was the Spanish Empire. The Spanish Empire was formed by, I kid you not, a bunch of crazed Spaniards going west. And turns out conquering an entire continent. 2 continents, in fact, North America and South America. This is the extent of the Spanish Empire at its greatest height, from Alaska all the way down to the southern tip of Chile. How do they do this? This is the true story. The true story started when Cortés, conquistador, aspiring conquistador, sailed from Havana in Cuba to Mexico. Actually, he sneaked out because he disobeyed the official orders, because the governor of Havana wanted to be the big boss and lead the expedition. And Cortés was like, no, screw that. I want all the gold and glory for myself. And so he literally sneaked out with 13 ships in the dead of night. He arrived in the jungles of Mexico. His men found out that he had broken orders. They nearly mutinied. He managed to control it, keep it under, say, look, we're here, guys. Let's just focus on the mission. And then in the night, he did this. This is a true story. In the night, Cortés and his trusted lieutenants went to the ships and sunk them. And the men woke up in the morning, 500 Spanish men, woke up in the morning with their only way of going home, sinking into the water. But there was a small problem. Cortés didn't realize the sea was very shallow, the boats didn't sink properly. Awkward, right? So everyone goes onto these boats, it's like, WTF, what is going on? You know, the boat was there, now it's sinking. How did boats magically sink overnight? And they saw all the holes that were drilled by Cortés and his men, and so they strung him up and they're going to execute him. And he said to them, you can kill me now, but you're still in the jungles of Mexico and you're all going to die anyway. Or you can free me and let me lead you to gold and glory. And they were like, okay, golden glory, right? Okay? And true story, 500 men, a few cannons, a few horses conquered the Aztec Empire. The Aztec Empire was all of this bit, right? And that unleashed the wave of Spanish colonialization. And let's just pause and think, right? The Aztec Empire was a pretty impressive empire. How did 500 men with a few cannons capture an entire empire? Because of their aggression. When they met the Aztec emperor, they immediately kidnapped him, locked themselves in a room with him, and told the Aztecs, fill a room about the size of this one to the brim with gold. And the Aztecs didn't know what to do about it. And the consistent hyper-aggressiveness of the Spaniards completely derailed the Aztecs and caused the empire to collapse. So what does this mean for us? Well, let's think about a highly aggressive disruptor you all know and some of you might love. This guy. Anyone heard of Apple? Right? Nearly, you wouldn't have, right? Do you know that in 1997, Apple was going to die? Do you know the only reason Apple didn't die is because Microsoft gave them a loan? And the reason they gave them a loan was because Bill Gates was worried that otherwise the Competition Commission would break up Microsoft. So Apple get a $150 million loan. They can just about stay afloat. 13 years later, they become the world's most valuable company. And they did it because Steve Jobs was extremely aggressive in driving through the iPod, the iPhone, and all of this new wave. And so what's important here is to understand that disruptors are highly aggressive, right? They are much hungrier. So we have the speed and we have the aggression. So all things being equal, a disruptor is going to beat you, even if they're very small, because they're going to move much faster with great innovation velocity, and they are much more aggressive than you. They want it more. But there's a third piece of the puzzle to disruption. Here we have a painting of a historical painting of a true historical event, and we'll notice some Chinese junks, right? That's actually their name. It's not an insulting term. They were called junks, right? And these were the largest floating vessels of their time. Okay, these were significantly larger than all European ships. The Chinese junks were huge. And here we have HMS Nemesis. HMS Nemesis was commissioned by the British East India Company. It was the first ocean-going, all-iron steamboat. It's a lot of words. What does that mean? What it means is this. When you have an iron hull and your opponent has a wooden hull, you win. If you can sail into the wind with HMS Nemesis, you can win, because the sailboats can't chase after you. So all this boat did in one afternoon was sail into the wind. It had longer range guns and literally obliterated the Chinese fleet. 13 massive Chinese warships were eliminated, captured 2 forts, and history went like this. Because this battle was the foundation of the city of Hong Kong. Hong Kong was founded after the end of the First Opium War so that the British could sell heroin to China. And it was made possible by one boat. They only sent one boat. So what does this mean for us? Its superior technology will outclass the traditional opponent. And that's exactly what happened with Netflix versus Blockbuster. The original Netflix model was DVDs in the post, right? Good idea, kind of cool, okay, let's build, but it's not transformationally disruptive, right? But that's because Netflix was learning how to do anything you want, whenever you want, wherever you want. And when Netflix released Netflix Online, round about here, it was game over Blockbuster, because it wasn't even close. And here we can see again the demand for instant watch versus DVDs in the post. So what does this mean? What it means is really simple. Disruptors win by moving much faster, with much greater aggression, and with superior technology. This is why incumbents die, right? This is why incumbents die. They're not fast enough, they're not aggressive enough, and they don't have the technology to keep up. For example, Borders. You've heard of Borders books, right? How did they lose to a scrappy website selling second-hand books, otherwise known as Amazon? Because of this. Because Amazon moved much faster into the online space. For a while, Amazon ran the website for Borders. They really liked that. Amazon is much more aggressive, and Amazon has superior technology, as we're going to talk about later. And so this is basically what I would like you to understand about the phenomenon of disruption. Everyone is sitting in their comfortable BAU. This doesn't mean you're not working hard, right? But you're working hard on the business as usual. And then a threat arrives, a new entrant, and they attack the market so aggressively and so viciously with such superior technology and speed that they literally slaughter the incumbents and a new paradigm emerges. This is basically what happens with disruption. Now, the interesting thing to note is this, and this is really worth pausing about and thinking, because it has nothing to do with how much money you have, right? Let's just think about this. You can't fix disruption by paying more money. Okay, more money does not solve your problems. It's not a question of talent. It's not a question of how big you are, or the customers you have, or even the existing technology that you have. All of those are irrelevant. And so this really is worth pausing and thinking, saying, what? So even if ASTRO spent all its money and all its talent and used its large size and all its customers and existing technology, it would probably still lose to the disruptors. This is what I'm saying, to be crystal clear. And that is really should make you be saying, whoa. Because how do you win? Right? If it's not a question of these things. And if you want an example of a person who was wondering that same thing, it was Stephen Elop, the former CEO of Nokia, who in a tearful interview when Nokia finally was bought by Microsoft said, quote, unquote, we didn't do anything wrong, but somehow we lost. So sad, right? But actually what they did do wrong is they didn't respect the speed, aggression, and technology of the disruptor like Apple. So I want to take you on a journey to talk about this a little bit more. So I want you to feel that you really are more confident in understanding what is disruption actually all about. So again, hands up, this is going to be the no bullshit approach, right? I'm just going to lay it out straight, what I think is the key issues and what the research backs up, okay? So the $1 trillion, and it is a $1 trillion question, is why don't traditional incumbents fight back, right? Why didn't the Chinese beat the Mongols or anyone else? Why didn't the Aztecs or the Inca or the Maya or anyone else beat just a few Spanish soldiers? Why didn't the Chinese, who were the superpower of the time, beat one ship and a company, right? They weren't even fighting Britain. It was the British East India. They were fighting a company. And here's why. Number one, the incumbents are too slow and stupid, right? They don't respond fast enough and they don't really understand what's going on until it's far too late. So it's a question of intelligence, right? Secondly, the incumbents don't actually really care. What does this mean? What it means is that the leaders of traditional incumbent companies aren't leaders at all. They are managers administrating the business as usual system. They are not providing a vision and inspiring and engaging the people to go forward. They are managing your KPIs, right? And so what that means is that employees aren't engaged, and what it also means is there is zero incentive for innovation. And here's what happens. If you're a smart person at a company, you know what you're going to do. You're going to leave and you're going to set up your own company. Why would I innovate for you? Think about that, right? You're literally losing all your innovative people because of this. And then finally, incumbents, they don't care about building the better future. They're not thinking about going forward. They just sit in the current reality. So what does this mean? It means specifically that corporations will default to massive profits today rather than building a better world tomorrow. Given the choice, most companies and most senior leaders will prefer to have a great quarterly result than to say profits are down, but we have a great few ideas coming up through the pipeline. They're not building the better future, and that's what I want to talk to you about. Let's talk about stupidity, right? Let's talk about being slow and not really understanding what's going on. Because once upon a time, there was a company called BlackBerry. Some of you might even have used BlackBerry, right? It was so popular in London, it was called Crackberry, okay? True story, right? People were like, right? And they were awesome, and they did a great job of really taking mobile phones to the next level of technology, right? They played a key role in that. And, and so they rightfully thought they were awesome. And then someone comes along called Steve Jobs and says, we're going to launch the iPhone, right? And the quote, unquote, of the co-CEO of BlackBerry on watching Apple's presentation was this: I will be okay. That's what he said, literally, on the record, right? And then, of course, oh my God, it turns out the iPhone is awesome, right? Everyone's like, this is the coolest thing ever. Everyone is super jealous, right? I want an iPhone. Everyone's like, oh, you have keys. That's so nice, right? Touch screen, right? Apps, all this cool stuff. And so after a while, BlackBerry were like, oh my gosh, we've really missed the ball here. We need to do something, guys, right? This is the management saying, we need to innovate, right? Okay, this is what happens, okay? But what happens is that they think we need to build an iPhone. They don't get what it's really about, and I'm going to come to that in a minute. Okay, so basically BlackBerry, this is true, okay, released the world's worst product, okay? They released something called the BlackBerry Storm, which was remarkable for having 99% return rates. Okay, so 99% of people bought it, realized it was crap, gave it back, and bought an iPhone instead. Okay, and you know, in a famous interview, one of the co-CEOs, because BlackBerry had two CEOs at the time, co-CEOs, right, said that was a massive mistake because they rushed a poor product that then gave every incentive to their existing customers to try something new, right? And so as a result, BlackBerry had no idea what was going on. Here are some of the things that they did. Did anyone buy the BlackBerry Playbook? No one ever admits to buying it, right? Maybe someone did in this audience, but don't worry, I won't pick you out, okay? The BlackBerry Playbook was BlackBerry's tablet, the response to the iPad. Do you know what? I'm not kidding, this is what they did, right? It had no email. They released a tablet in 2011 that had no email functionality, right? The only way you could get email was to Bluetooth sync your BlackBerry phone so that you could then transition emails through that. Okay, this was their genius idea, right? It didn't have a calendar function, right? You released a business tablet, right, that doesn't have a calendar and doesn't support calendar functions. I'm not making this up, right? This has actually happened. Smart people made these decisions, okay? And basically what I think that illustrates is they just had no idea what was going on, right? BlackBerry had no idea. They're trying to figure things out. They're in turmoil, and it basically takes them too long to figure out what they should actually do. So BlackBerry recently have released a few, fairly okay phones, but it's too late, right? It's 2016. 2015, last year was when they released a pretty good one. And so it becomes game over. BlackBerry's still around today, but they are a shadow of their former selves. This is the BlackBerry share price from 2004. You can see that they were like, we are awesome, right? iPhone was released about here. And then we're not so awesome. BlackBerry went on a journey from $1 billion company to a $20 billion, back to $1 billion in around about a decade. Pretty amazing, right? This is the VUCA reality. You can win very quickly, and you can lose very quickly. And so what I want to share with you here is that the management system is what kills the innovation. One second. All right? And what I want to emphasize here is that the management system of the company makes it slow and stupid, right? Another example would be Nokia. Nokia had a working iPhone prototype in 2005. Right? Their engineers were saying to senior leaders, please can we build this? And the senior leaders, and this is what the case studies very clearly show, said no. You know why? Because we put a lot of money into the Symbian platform. We're Nokia, we're number one. We'll build an iPhone like in 2015. They're like, yeah, it's a good idea, just later. They didn't get it. And of course, by then it was far too late. Do you know when Nokia's maximum revenue was? When they made the most amount of revenue and profit? 2009. Right? So what I'm talking about here is the speed of the aggressor and that the incumbent doesn't have the intelligence to realize what is going on. Right? They're literally left for dust. Yes, sir?
Wouldn't innovation lead to risk? That is because you're going you think that this is the way to go, but because it's totally wrong, you should have taken the other way instead. There is a risk element.
Exactly. So there's a massive risk element to innovation. And management can't abide risk, right? If you're a manager, the one thing you don't want is risk. You want everything to be nice and safe. So you kill the innovation. Yes. And that's how then the company dies, because this is what happens en masse, right? You're asking the great questions, so we're jumping ahead. But basically, yeah, management murders innovation, right? That's the quote. You can quote me on that, all right? If you want to think about why, because here's the thing, right? I get told, my job is to help companies innovate, right? And I go and I'll meet the senior leaders and they tell me, oh, our staff just so disengaged, they can't be creative, right? And I'm like, no, it's because you built a culture and a system that kills any innovations they create, right? Because my belief is, if you're a good company, you hire good people, right? So you're taking good people, and good people naturally want to create, right? Good people are naturally solving problems and thinking and ideas. And you don't have to be a Steve Jobs. No one's asking you to do that. You're just being engaged and being creative, right? and we're helping you work together. So actually, from my problem perspective, it's the system that kills people. I'm not saying it's the manager as a person, it's the management system, right? But let's get on to the second part, right? Because, wait, okay, a few people here, right? Does this seem somewhat familiar? Right? Okay, I won't open my eyes, right? I won't, no names, okay? But let's just be honest, right? Let's keep it real. We sit in meetings where we're like, oh, dear God, please, you know? It's like being at school again, right? You look at the clock and it's 10 past, and then it feels like forever, and you look at the clock and it's only 12 past, right? And like, how can that have been 2 minutes? It felt like 2 lifetimes, right? Okay? But the reality is that, according to Gallup, they do a global employee engagement survey, 87% of talent globally is disengaged. That means either actively disengaged, that they hate their employer and they're sabotaging them, or disengaged and they're just like, meh, whatever. If you get 2% over here, I'll jump ship, thank you very much. Right? And now, what does this mean? It means that when the rallying cry from management says, we need to innovate, people are like, I don't really care about the company. I'm not engaged, right? Why should I innovate for you? And this is actually a massive problem. Because let me tell you, as you said, innovation is risky, right? Innovation is difficult. If I want to innovate outside of my BAU, right, I'm going to spend less time with my kids. So why am I, for who? For what? For a manager? So I might look stupid and fail. I'm spending less time with my kids. It's difficult, so I have to work harder. I don't have any incentive. I don't get any monetary reward. I don't get any shares. I get nothing. If I do all of this, I might get a pat on the back and, you know, a dinner. Right? And then we're surprised that there's no innovation. Right? Shocking. Right? Unbelievable. But this is just the truth of the matter. Right? The truth of the matter is that there is no incentive to innovate, and also, very importantly, there is no incentive to fight back against the aggressors. Using the example of the Aztec Empire, right? When the Spanish were attacking, the Aztec being an empire, it was composed of different kingdoms, right? And actually, a lot of the kingdoms didn't like their Aztec overlords. They didn't really care for them. So when the Spanish arrived, they were like, oh, awesome, let's support these guys. And so they rose up against their oppressors, right? The Aztec subjects were not engaged with supporting the empire. And in the same way, employees are not engaged with supporting their employer. There's no reason to fight. And so when it comes to fight, there are no troops. Finally, I love this cartoon, it's so brilliant, right? Incumbents just aren't really interested in building a better world, right? So in this cartoon, we have a traditional board meeting, right? And the manager, the leader is saying, instead of risking anything new, let's just play it safe and continue our slow decline into obsolescence, right? And this is exactly what you were talking about, taking no risk, right? If we take no risks, of course, but we will become irrelevant. The price of doing nothing is not nothing, it is you will lose, right? And so as a result, let's get serious about building a better world, because I'm not talking a fluffy better world. I'm talking about something like this. We know about the Volkswagen scandal, right? And we know about the company called Tesla. So I want to just make this case. Does anyone have a picture of their family or their child in their wallet? Does anybody? You don't carry any pictures of your family around with you? The phone. Oh. Can someone bring up a picture of their family on the phone? I just want to use that picture for 1 second. I promise I'll give it back straight away, right? Would anyone mind sharing their picture with me? Come on. One person. Don't worry, I'm not going to do anything crazy. I just want to serve to illustrate an example for you. One person? One person? Yeah, may I? What's your husband's name?
Richard.
And your children?
Stephanie and Sean.
My sister's called Stephanie.
Oh, really?
Okay, so we got Richard, Stephanie, and Sean. Sean, right? Okay, Richard, Stephanie, and Sean. Okay, real people. Let's give them a choice. We're going to say there's 2 rooms that you can put these people in. They have to spend the day in a room, but you have a choice of this room. In room A, we have a Volkswagen, okay? And we're going to have to turn the Volkswagen engine on, and they have to sit in that room. They can't sit in the car. They just have to sit in the room and breathe all the emissions. Not just the emissions, but all the emissions they lied about, right? So we can put Richard and Sean here. Do you want to do that? You want to have them sit in a room for a whole day with an engine on? Maybe not, right? Or we can put Richard, Sean, and Stephanie in a room with a Tesla, an electric car that only emits water. Now, if you have a choice, where do you want to put your family? Tesla or Volkswagen? Tesla, right? Right? Do you guys agree? Would anyone want to put their family here? Right, good, yeah? Okay, I'll be worried. Okay. Can we just give this lady a round of applause, please, for sharing? Thank you so much. So the reason I say this is I want to get you guys to building a better world is not like some abstract thing. It's your family, right? Because your family every day sit in this room. It's called Kuala Lumpur, right? Yeah? When you're sitting in traffic, they are breathing this every single day, right? And Europe today, the mayor of London recently announced that Oxford Street is the most polluted street on the world, on the planet. And New Delhi is like, no, we got this, right? Okay? But what he meant is something called nitrogen oxide, right? Nitrous oxide, which is actually a very damaging pollutant generated by diesel engines. So basically what happened in Europe is a lot of these car companies got together and said, yo, innovation's really hard. Let's just kind of make them believe that diesel is legit, it's really cool, it's really clean, and then we'll be fine. And so Europe and all the politicians were like, oh yeah, look at all this data, it makes a lot of sense, we're going to go green because diesel emits a lot less carbon dioxide, right? So Europe went down the diesel path. And now all the European cities, Paris, total pollution zone, right? London, packed full of nitrogen dioxide. It's a really big problem. And so the reason why I get so angry about this is it's not just a mistake, they lied, right? In case you don't know what Volkswagen did, they built an engine and they said it produces, for example, 10 grams of pollution. And you test it and it would say 10 grams of pollution, right? The computer says 10 grams. But actually what they did is the engine produces 100 grams of pollution, and when it knows it's being tested, slides it down to 10 grams, because it can detect when it's being tested, right? And the moment you unplug it, boom, back to 100 grams, right? And right now, the costs to Volkswagen are 18 billion euros, and the lawsuits haven't even begun, right? This is just in cost, and think about their brand and everything else, right? I used to be very proud of Volkswagen as a German citizen, right? And now I'm disgusted by them, right? It's not that you just couldn't innovate, you actively lied to the world, right? And this is the world's largest car producer, right? They are literally driving global warming and the poisoning of our families and children because of what? Because they just didn't want to innovate? Why didn't these guys build an electric car? Why do we need an American tech entrepreneur who founded PayPal who knows nothing about electric cars? Why does he have to do this? Why doesn't this say Toyota, Volkswagen, General Motors, Ford, or any goddamn car company, right? Why do these incumbents sit there and lie and lie? And it's because they don't care about building a better world, right? And so this is actually, for me, the biggest issue, because they just don't care. They just want to take their quarterly profits and they want to keep on going. And then they're surprised when people get pissed off, right? And so the reality is that the Gen Y that is coming through, they know this, right? Whether it's targeting the banks or the traditional car manufacturers, there is a deep inherent mistrust between the younger generation and the traditional brands, okay? Any Gen Y, you say, who would you rather have, a Volkswagen or Tesla? They're all going to say this, right? Tesla today outsells Mercedes 2-to-1, 3-to-1 in America, right? The largest product launch in consumer history was when Tesla announced the Model 3. An electric car that no one has ever seen. I repeat, no one has ever seen this car, right? It's not real, it doesn't exist yet. 400,000 people have pre-registered to buy this car. 400,000 people have paid a $1,000 deposit to buy this car, right? Why? Because people are fed up with this, right? We don't want to sit in a city where our children are being poisoned to death, thank you very much. And we don't want you to lie to us about it. And so this is why I'm so passionate about this, that it's not just about money, it's about actually caring at some point about something, right? And so this is basically where we get to understand why traditional incumbents die. They can't find disruption. If you want to have the simple, soundbite, management murders innovation, all right? It murders it, right? En masse, right? All your creative ideas, I'm sure all of you have gone to your manager and they said, no. Seem familiar at some point, right? Yes, okay? And so what is happening is it's not that the people or the money, it's that there is a system in place that systematically eliminates innovation. And so that is why your money and your talent and your technology will not fix the problem. Because the problem is the way that you're solving the problem, right? And so we create companies that are slow and stupid, that are disengaged and disincentivized, and selfish and corrupt, right? To the point of criminality. This is the reality that we have today, created by the management system. Now let's think about ASTRO. Because you guys have launched the Go Shop, right? Yeah, the online shopping mall. Quite recently, right? Why wasn't that launched 5 years ago? Is the Go Shop going to compete with Lazada? Is it going to compete? You guys know Carousel? Yeah, Carousel is a basically instant eBay app. You literally, if I want to sell a picture of this projector, I just, boom, picture online instantly. It's one of the fastest growing apps in Malaysia, right? And Amazon hasn't arrived in the region yet, but Amazon did arrive in India, where Flipkart and others had a big lead, and they're just obliterating them. So this almost strikes me. I don't know the numbers, but I wonder if it's too little, too late. It's a cool idea. It's a good idea. When I heard about it, I was like, that's a great idea. It makes a lot of sense. But it should have happened 5 years ago, right? So this is a tangible example for me where perhaps the management systems at ASTRO have not been enabling the innovation that they need to help ASTRO go forward. This is a question I have in my mind. And so let's get a bit more technical, right, about innovation, right? So if you don't want to read the writing, look at the picture, okay? So this is a great guy, Dave Melchior. I really, really recommend you follow him on LinkedIn. Really smart guy. He's heavily involved with, you might have heard of 500 startups or 500 Jurians, as they're known in Southeast Asia. And he makes this fantastic point in a recent blog article, which is this. Because everyone's always talking about the hype of tech companies, right? Oh, it's a bubble, they're going to die, right? But he makes a point which is, it's not about a tech company, it's about a paradigm. These new tech companies are run in different ways. And so the real bubble is in the traditional company. The real bubble is to believe that a company, maybe like ASTRO, right, is worth a price-to-earnings ratio that it's not. Traditional companies are valued at maybe 20 to 25 of their price-to-earnings ratio, right? And maybe they're not worth that. Maybe that's actually the issue. Because if we think about the difference between ASTRO and Netflix, and why Netflix might end up beating ASTRO, it's not because Netflix has more money or more technology. It's because Netflix is not run on the management system. In fact, Netflix has long left management behind. And if you want to do some research, search for the Netflix culture deck. It's one of the most famous PowerPoints to come out of Silicon Valley. That sounds weird to say, right? Famous PowerPoint, but yes, it's true. It has over 15 million views and it outlines the philosophy of the company. I'll give you one simple example. Okay, Netflix doesn't have a holiday policy. How many days of holiday do you guys get? 20, right? Here's my point. Well, here's Netflix's point, which I totally agree with. If I'm paying you, for example, 100,000 ringgit a year, why do I care if you take 20 or 22 days of holiday? Why is that relevant? Because you're working weekends, you're working overtime anyway, right? So am I treating you like a child? Like I don't trust you to take, if you take one extra day, like what? I should fire you because what? Because you couldn't get the flights back in time? It's retarded, right? It doesn't make any sense, right? If your employees are total idiots, yes, you should regulate them in that way, but they're not, right? They're smart, great people like yourselves, and the problem is you put a stupid policy in place that transforms them into the wrong kind of person, right? Right? You know what I'm saying? Okay? And so this is just one tiny example. I really highly recommend you read this, okay? Now, I think this might be happening to ASTRO, because this is your share price of the last 5 years. And if I look at it, that looks like minus something, right? And so I'm not, all fun and games aside, this is not just a nice idea, right? This is crippling your inability to drive value, to build a more successful company. And it's not if, now that you are competing with Netflix, because I have a Netflix subscription, I don't have an ASTRO subscription, right? And I don't know many people who have ASTRO, and I know a lot of people who have Netflix or iFlix, right? Where is this going to go into the future? And this is exactly what this guy means about the misguided valuation of large public companies. The bubble is in the existing system, I think. It's not in the new ones. And so what we need to talk about is this innovation shift, right? The innovation shift represents the transition from the management paradigm, the management system, to a new way of working and thinking, a new way of creating value. You can think of it as a transition from the industrial age management systems to information age innovation ecosystems. Now here's a great example. The largest companies in 2001 were all traditional industrial companies, apart from Microsoft. So you got General Electric, you got Microsoft, you got Exxon, you got Citi, a traditional bank, and Walmart, right? And here we can start, the green ones are the tech startups, right? And as we can see, from 2001 to 2011, nothing really changed much. But now, in 2016, the top 5 largest companies in the world are all technology companies. Okay, we have Apple, we have Alphabet, which is the parent company of Google. We have Microsoft, Amazon, and Facebook. And guess what all their growth curves are doing? Right? I mean, Amazon literally just prints money, right? So these companies have not only won, they're going to keep winning, right? And they're going to beat, for example, Walmart, right? Amazon is going to beat Walmart at the moment. There's no way Walmart can fight back. So it's not that it's a tech company, it's that the concept of creating innovation and being a company that can do that is the future. And so what I'd like to share with you is this innovation shift. If there's something one thing I'd like you to know from this whole presentation is that if ASTRO is to survive, it has to do this. It has to shift from being a slow bureaucracy that is overmanaged, under-led, with very low innovation, and it has to become an agile innovator that is fast-moving, aggressive, and highly innovative. Okay? If you don't do this, in the next decade, ASTRO probably won't make it, right? Because it will simply be unable to compete, right? That's the basic point. So we're halfway roughly in the presentation, and I think rather than me just talking more and more, I would like to take a few questions from yourselves to sort of get a feel for the audience, and then we'll jump into sort of thinking about what can we do about all of this stuff I've shared with you. So over to you, and I'd love to hear some questions from yourselves.
Again, you said the bubbles and then actually the transformation shift within the management of the company. Because sometimes that sits within the culture itself and then it's integrated. So a part of the technology, the industry influence, how do you see the innovation shift within the change management and people and culture? Because it's not straightforward, right?
Yes. Yes, so the question is how do you transition the internal hierarchies and traditional job roles? Is that what you're asking? Yes. So how do you transform the people, the mindset, and the culture, right? And this is the great question, and this is actually what the next bit is going to be about. But I'm going to talk a little bit about it because you actually hit the nail on the head. And if you step back and you think about a company, there's 3 systems in play. One is the technology system, right? The technologies that are used to build the products the company makes, right? So your satellite broadcast, all that kind of stuff, right? Then you have the economic system, which is the business model, right? And then you have the social system, which is the people and the culture. Now the thing is, they're not all the same in terms of transformation, right? It's easy to change technology. You just buy new computers, new software, whatever else. It's pretty straightforward, right? I'm sorry if anyone in IT, I didn't mean to upset you. But you can transition technology, right? Quite easily. Business models, harder to transition, right? How are you going to transition to a subscription-based model, for example, beyond what you already have? Or how do you transition the people, the culture, and the mindset? And part of the issue is that we focus so much on the technology and not on the people and the culture. When in fact, that's where the key issue is. So you're right to say that. That's where we should focus. And so part of what the conversation needs to be about is the repurposing. So what this basically comes down to is, what is my job as a manager? Is my job as a manager to hit the KPI? Because if that's my job, that's all I'm going to do. Because in none of your KPIs, I expect there's going to be a lot of talk about innovation, right? But if in your KPI it says you need to create innovation, and a company, for example, like 3M, they invented the Post-it note and a whole bunch of other stuff, in their KPI, it's 30% of new revenue every 3 years must come from new products. It's a requirement in their KPI. So that KPI requires the people at the company to keep innovating. Right? So that's a very simple way of explaining how you can start to shift things, right? What are you incentivizing, rewarding? You know, if you're doing 100% business as usual, you're doing 0% innovation, by definition. So you can recalibrate that. Google very famously did something called 20% time. Have you heard of that? So 20% time wasn't invented by Google, it was actually invented by an Australian company, but Google basically said 1 day in 5, you're free to do whatever you want. Just think of something innovative for the company. And that gave birth, for example, to Gmail, right? Was formed from this 20% time. Google today doesn't run 20% time anymore. But you know why? because they've transitioned their culture to no longer need it. Right? They don't need to force people to take 1 day in 5 to be innovative, because they have an innovative culture. So they don't need to mandate it. It happens automatically. So it's a great question, and the specific way to transition it is to think about what are we measuring and rewarding. Right? Any other questions?
This innovation would apply to the airline industry as well, right? Like how we have low-cost airlines as compared to full-fledged airlines.
Yes. It's again, a great example, right? Where those new models came in, those new innovators, new disruptors, and completely changed, right? And Malaysia Airlines is still struggling today, right? And look at what AirAsia have done. They've branched out into insurance, hotels, phones, right? They've built an innovation ecosystem around themselves, which is a really smart strategy to take. Yeah, so it's a great example. But the point is that this disruptive phenomena is coming to all industries, right? Whether you're in hotels or airlines or media or computers or farming, right? The Internet of Things coming into farming is changing the game, right? For example. So it's every single sector and industry is going to be changed. Did you have a question? No? So in order to bring some energy back in the room, I'd like to invite you guys to kind of just stand up. Stand up, because you've been sitting for a while, you're listening to me very patiently. So I think we have to, so I'd like you, I'm never going to ask you to do things that I won't do. So this is a thing we do in rugby to kind of warm ourselves up, okay? Please don't hit anybody, right? It's not that kind of session. So what I'd like you to do is just follow me, right? So just put your hands out, just kind of shake it off a little bit. And then just kind of move your hands like this. Yeah, relax the shoulders and go up. And then we go down, and then we hit ourselves in the back. And then we clap at the top. Yeah. Yes. And then you turn to the person next to you and give them a high five. Yeah. All right, we're going to do it one more time, and we're going to do it a lot faster. We're going to be like the disruptors, okay? We're going to be speedy, aggressive. Are you ready? Disengaged, right? Are you ready? Yeah. All right, 3, 2, 1, go. You're going to run on the spot. Arms out, and pump. Then we go up, and we go down, and then we go around the back, then we go up and down, clap, and high five. All right, guys, grab a chair, sit down. Thank you so much. Whew, okay, we've got some energy. We're back, right? We're back. So let's talk about where we can go today, okay? So the pitch that I made to you was this. This is one of the earliest Ford cars ever made, right? Now, the thing to understand is the system we used to run the company that built this is basically the same system we use today, right? Management, right? The way that they manage this company is pretty much the same as we manage it today, okay? We have some better tools and slang like KPI, but it's basically the same concept. Managers managing the bureaucracy. That's it, right? And basically, what we're talking about is the innovation shift. And the innovation shift is to understand that there are 2 approaches. Okay, there are actually 2 ways of running organizations. One is the management system. It's emerged out of the industrial era. It's essentially been credited to Charles Taylor. And here's the thing, it's terrible in a VUCA environment. Management is great if all you need to do is the same thing over and over again. If you're in a factory and you're just making nails, right, and you just make the nail in the same way, and you just hit the nail, right, and that's it. And you just make it really efficient. And it's great at doing that, but the problem is we don't live in that reality anymore. We live in a VUCA reality where today we're making nails, tomorrow we're making banana bread, right? Okay? And it's just totally different, and we can't keep doing the same thing, right? It's not going to work. On the other hand, we have innovation ecosystems, right? And innovation ecosystems are a very different way of thinking and creating value. And what they are basically great at is thriving in VUCA environments. They're very good at saying, hey, tomorrow banana bread, no problem. The day after that, you want to make a car? Let's do that, okay? They're very agile and creative in that way. Now, there is a price to pay, okay? And that is that they are not as efficient. They are not as efficient. And the reason is because that they have a lot of creativity, and creativity is an inefficient process. So if you want to maximize profit, you do this. If you want to maximize innovation and agility, you do this, right? They're basically different. And one of the things to understand in the innovation shift is that you will be making relatively less short-term profit. For example, the Google Photos idea you gave, right? Now's the time to talk about it. Google could have said, you know what, we're not going to do Google Photos. It's going to cost too much, and we're not making any direct money out of it. That would be a management decision, right? It's not efficient. Let's just bump up our profits next quarter instead of using that money to build Google Photos. They could have done that. And that makes a lot of sense. And no one in the boardroom would have said no. But you would have built a less effective Android platform. You would lose competitors to Apple, for example, or maybe some other disruptor coming along, some of the Indian new platforms emerging, right? And so what Google understood is that it's about providing the right kind of creativity and innovations its customers want. It's not about profit maximization. It's not. Now, you can still make a lot of money, but you have to think beyond just maximization. And so before I talk about this, I actually want to just touch on what actually is innovation, okay? Because it gets misconstrued again and again and again. The biggest thing I hear is, yeah, we've already heard that idea before. Good, right? That is what innovation is. Okay? Innovation is not invention. Okay? Innovation is the first car ever made. And you know what? It was crap, right? It was a rubbish car. None of you had bought it. You would have said, you would say, give me a horse, okay? That's what actually everyone said, okay? The only reason, this is the first car ever made by Carl Benz in Germany, the only reason it became famous is because his wife said, I'm going to take it on a tour through the towns and cities just to show it off. And everyone was amazed by the gimmick of a horseless carriage. But it couldn't pull a plow, it broke down all the time, there were no petrol stations, it was noisy, loud, uncomfortable. There would be no reason to buy this, okay? It was not valuable. That's a really important point to understand, okay? But this is invention because it created a new possibility. Yes, this was not valuable, but this is the Ford Model T, and this is. Because this works now, and this is actually better than a horse, right? And so the crucial point is that from invention to innovation is that it's something that you people will pay for. And you know what? Here's the secret, guys. Nothing that Henry Ford did was new. Nothing. Not a single thing was new. He didn't invent, let's go through it, the wheels, the engine, the box, the manufacturing process of moving assembly lines was not invented by Henry Ford, okay? He didn't invent any of these things, but he innovated by bringing them together in new ways. So this is the key point. When we're saying be innovative, we're saying go out there, copy everyone else's ideas, and build them into something really exciting and a better value proposition, right? It's the combination of things. For example, the European printing press from Gutenberg, right? Movable type, already invented. Ink, already invented. Paper, already invented. Printing presses, already invented, right? But the problem was that they carved the whole book page, not the movable type. And so to set the page took a lot of time and effort. And so all he did was took what already existed and just recombined it. And so that's what the secret of innovation is. Right? It's about copying, combining, and transforming. And if you do that, you can build something like this. The iPhone did not invent anything, despite what Steve Jobs actually likes to say, okay? It wasn't the first smartphone. It wasn't the first phone to have apps. It wasn't the first phone to have a browser. It wasn't the first phone in many things, right? But what it was the first phone to bring all those different technologies together in a way that was really exciting and awesome, and that people would pay a lot of money for. That's the difference. So when we're saying be innovative, we're not saying invent the first car, right? Or the first ever phone. We're saying look at what already exists and combine it in new ways to create new value. And so that's what you need to do to survive. You need to copy existing inventions and combine them in new ways. So you could look at what would someone like ASTRO in Brazil, what are they doing today? In Germany, in Russia, in America, right? In China. And you see what they're doing, and you copy those ideas, and you deliver it to Malaysia in a way that's relevant and valuable here. Okay? iFlix is not doing anything new. iFlix, Netflix, come on, right? Okay? It even looks the same, the logo, right? But that's fine. Rocket Internet did that with Lazada, right? It's basically an Amazon clone, but that's okay, right? That's what innovation actually is. And then the trick is you go from surviving by building one innovative product to building an innovation ecosystem. By understanding it's not just about, for example, the camera. It's about the camera stored on the device that you can access anywhere, at any time, right? And share socially. That is what the real value is. That's how you capture the market. That's how you make sure that instead of maximizing the customer today, I make sure I have a customer for life. That's the difference, right? And so what we're really trying to do with our innovation ecosystems is build this kind of thing. This is the competitive advantage, right? that we are trying to really create. So how do we do this? So what it really comes down to is intelligence, okay? Now, the best quote I've ever heard to describe intelligence is by a French philosopher called Jean Piaget, and he says it like this: intelligence is what you do when you don't know what to do, right? That's the bit, right? When you don't know what to do, okay? So an intelligent person encounters a novel situation, analyzes it, and creates a novel solution, right? That's what an intelligent person does. You can train a monkey to do very complex tasks because it just does the same thing over and over again, right? That's why it's a monkey, okay? The success of human beings is because our brains are so smart. We are able to constantly encounter novel situations and create new solutions to them. That's why we are so successful. And so we can think about it like this. For example, BlackBerry was facing standard competitors and building its standard BlackBerry phones, right? Despite a company screaming at you, we're really innovative, all they've done is just move the colors around, okay? It's not actually that innovative. And then someone comes along with an iPhone, right? And then this is what happens at BlackBerry. Not a lot, right? We're trying to figure it out. It's loading, okay? Now let's compare it to another company called Samsung, who incidentally used to make rubbish phones and having a little bit of a blip right now, okay? But the first Samsung phones were terrible. And so I say this because we have to recognize and give Samsung a lot of credit for coming out of nowhere and building some of the world's best phones. So Samsung encountered the iPhone, and instead of thinking about it, they said, you know what? Wow, it's innovation time. Let's just copy them, right? Right? That's called innovation, okay? And then they built, the Samsung Galaxy and then also the Samsung Note series, okay? And so this is the difference. Meanwhile, BlackBerry is still thinking about it, right? Okay, and this is what happened, right? This is true. This is what happened, okay? So why did this company respond, and why is this one still thinking about it? Okay, because it's more intelligent. It has a bigger brain, okay? And we need to think about it in this way, that Samsung has been able to organize itself in such a way to have a superior intelligence. And what I want to talk to you is, what does that specifically mean, okay? I want to demystify it for you. So this is what it means. It's basically thinking about brains, okay? And brains are all about solving problems, right? They take in a problem, they think about it, and they produce a solution. And the bigger and better your brain, the better you can do that. Sound cool? Yeah? Pretty straightforward, right? And so what we're trying to think about is, how can we go from a small brain to a big brain? Because here's an unfortunate fact. They're not very efficient, right? If you're a manager, you're like, oh, this brain, it's all this extra stuff we don't need, maybe all this creativity, that's not very useful, I just want to hit my KPI, right? So a manager would not build a more complex brain. A manager will make a smaller brain, because you're not meant to think outside of the SOP, right? The standard operating procedure. You're not allowed to do that, so don't waste time on it. So this is what actually happens. Management literally makes the brain, the corporate brain, more stupid. And I'm going to show you exactly how it does that, all right? Okay? So the management bureaucracy, does this seem familiar to any of you? Yeah, you've seen this before, right? Here's the standard culprit, okay? Now we can actually do a very basic analysis of the intelligence of this system, okay? Now the advantages to this system are like this. It's stable and it's efficient, okay? There's a lot of stability here and there's a lot of efficiency. Right? So those are plus points, and that's not a bad thing. It can be useful. But there are some limitations. Okay? And so I'm going to take you through some basic maths. So we have 6 people here, right? Represented by the circles. So that means we have 10 connections. 5 going one way and 5 the other way, right? Now, the second thing to understand is that this is what happens. This lady wants to make a decision, but she's not sure. So she asks her boss. So it takes 1 step. Her boss is not sure, so he has to think about it. 2 steps. He's going to ask his boss. 3 steps. She needs to think about it. 4 steps. Send the order down. 5 steps. The manager needs to think, does he like it? Right? 7 steps. This was 6, this was 7. Right? It takes you 7 steps to get something done. Does that seem familiar to anyone? Right? Now, I'm going to come to diversity in a second, right? I'm going to talk about that in a second. Now, let's compare it to an innovation ecosystem, right? The innovation ecosystem is a bigger brain, and I'm going to show you literally why it's a bigger brain, okay? This is why. Intelligence is a function of connectivity. The more connected a system is, the more intelligent it is. It's not the parts, it's the relationships. Your brain is the most complex structure in the known universe, right? There are trillions of connections in your brains, and that's what makes us so intelligent. But we can reduce it to a simple thing of there are parts and there are relationships. And the more relationships we build, the more intelligent the system will be. Simple science, right? This is the science of intelligence, cybernetics. So person A, exactly the same person, she needs to make a decision. She asks her co-worker, right? Not a boss. They're all working together, right? Flat hierarchy. And important point, because she knows everybody, she knows that this is the right person to ask to, so she's not wasting time on inefficiency saying, do you know, do you know, do you know, right? Because that would slow the brain down. So we're going straight from A to E, ask this person, he thinks about it, gives a response. 3 steps. Do you guys see that? 1, 2, 3. So now we have 3 steps versus 7 steps. So literally, this is twice as smart in terms of speed. This will think faster than this system. And you can think about it like this, because A, why is she asking her boss? Because she's encountered a situation she doesn't know what to do, right? So she has to pump it up the hierarchy. She's encountered the same problem, and so she just leverages the greater network and gets a faster response. But there's more, right? Because there's actually 30 relationships, 6 times 5 here. So you have a lot more opportunities for different people to talk to each other, right? Let's say that she gets this novel problem, asks her boss doesn't know. But she doesn't want to look stupid to her boss, so she just says, don't worry about it, right? Forget it. And then the idea dies. And so we can literally, with some very simple maths, show that this kind of innovation ecosystem will always be smarter than this one. Now, if all she needs to do is hit the nail on the head, with a hammer, she'll be fine, right? But if she has to start doing things like creativity and innovation and working in a VUCA reality, she's in big trouble. Do you guys see that? And so this is literally the very simple basic maths of why the innovation ecosystem will always beat these guys. Netflix are organized like this, you are organized like this. And this is why Netflix will probably be going to win in the next decade. It literally is that simple, right? Now let's talk about a final point here, because I want to talk about diversity. Now why is diversity important? First of all, it's important because we should respect difference, right? That's a basic human right. But from a creativity perspective, diversity is what drives creativity. Okay, so we can think about it like this. In a standard corporation, maybe not ASTRO, but we can think more like big banks, right? Everyone tends to be the same, right? Everyone tends to wear the same suits, go to the same golf club, buy the same kind of cars, went to the same universities, do the same things, right? And so that means they're all kind of variations of each other. They lose their identities in the corporation. And that doesn't mean they're not individuals. It means to survive in the corporation, you have to anonymize yourself. And so creativity is literally a function of how we measure diversity. So if we create a string of possibilities here, we can only do variations of A. Right? We have A and A dash and A dash dash, but it's all just A. Now let's imagine we have here. We have 5 different people, right? And one is Chinese, one is European, one's African, one's Malay, one's all the rest. And now we can suddenly have a lot more diversity, right? We have the perspectives of A, B, C, D, E. And so this system will be more creative because it has more variety, more variance. It's literally that simple. And so when we push for diversity in the workspace, it's because we're trying to do this. To the extent that Google and Silicon Valley today is not actively looking for MBAs. They are no longer looking for Ivy League because they realized that they hired all those people and they got this. Right? It's true. I'm not kidding, right? Google today no longer looks at your university record. Right? They're on record as in BFM just yesterday, that they were saying how Laszlo Bock, the head of people for Google, says we found 0 correlation between academic records and professional success. Not 1%, 0%. Right? And so if a company like Google's future depends on its creativity, you should not just hire Ivy League people. Right? Because that is a way to kill your creativity. And so the innovation shift literally is the shift from this kind of organizational structure to this kind of organizational structure. That's the change we need to make happen. And here's a real example of a real map I built for one of my clients. Okay? This is called a social map. It shows the intelligence of the organization, right? And I won't go into too much detail. Basically, the more red the line, the more important the connection, and the bigger the box, the more connected that person is. So even in any intelligence, it's an asymmetric network, which means different parts are important for different other parts, right? And so what this basically means is you can actually map this out in a company. Right? You can create intelligence maps. And of course, let's come back to reality, right? Because Google and most of Silicon Valley are organized on the information ecosystem architecture, right? They're all organized like this. And that is why they win. It's not because they're in Silicon Valley and Google and technology. Those will help. But that's the basic engine of value creation. And here we can see Google share price going from nearly just over $200 in 2012 to 4 years later, nearly 800. So you'd have made 4x, right, in 4 years. Pretty good. Now, what do we need to do? What are the tangible, specific things that you can do as a employee at ASTRO? Okay, so this is where I want to talk about the tangible ways in which we can fight disruption with the innovation shift. Firstly, we need to explicitly build the innovation ecosystem. What that means is literally drawing that diagram of the hierarchy, crossing it out, and drawing the ecosystem saying this, not this. And then talking to your colleagues and managers and everyone else, how can we do this, right? But you basically need to be able to just say that's what we need to shift, right? Secondly, we need to talk about the transformation of managers into leadapreneurs, because unfortunately a traditional manager doesn't have the skill sets to be innovative, right? It's not that you can't, it's just you've never learned, right? And I think this is a really important point to understand. And then finally, we need to think about a new way of working, a new methodology. So I'm going to take you through the journey of understanding what does this really mean. The first thing is, okay, the innovation ecosystem. It's about, okay, we all get it, right? We draw the circles and we connect them together. But what do we now do with that? There's 3 things you need to do. 1, you need to create an innovation vision. What this means is to explicitly state why are we creating innovation? Why are we inspired to do this? Right? To legitimize the search for innovation. If you don't have a strong innovation vision and a strong strategy, you're just stuck in BAU. But if you have a vision that says we are going to be an innovative company and our strategy is to spend 20% of our time pursuing innovations, and it's in our KPIs that 20% of new revenue in the next 2 years has to come from new innovations, then you're on your way, right? Second thing you need to do is build what's called a disruptor radar, which means realistically, right now, does ASTRO know who are the people who are going to destroy it? Does ASTRO know where the threats are? Who are the threats? What are their vectors? Have you got 2 years or 10? I'm guessing that we don't have an innovation radar, right? Radar was invented by the British in World War II so they could detect where the German bombers were and fighters, right? Magic. And the Germans were like, how on earth do they know where we are all the time? And that radar is essentially what allowed Britain to win the Battle of Britain. So if you know who the threats are, if you know where they are, and also where the opportunities are, you can capture them. So it's about those 6 people in the connected saying, you should be going to conferences, you should be researching online, you should be going to startup communities in KL to find the innovations. Third thing you do is, at the minimum, you should have an internal process for creating innovation. So bringing in people who have a good idea and providing them with a structured journey to make the idea happen, giving them the support, tools, incentives, all the good stuff so they can do it. And if you want to get really advanced, and this is where a lot of corporations are going today, you have an external venture capital-like mechanism. You have an acquisition fund. Basically, why didn't ASTRO buy iFlix when it was a startup? Right? Why didn't they? Because they don't have this. Right? And they're not doing this. And they should have done this. And now it's going to be a big problem. Right? And so this is what the first thing of an innovation ecosystem is doing. You're basically inspired and engaged to innovate. You're legitimized. Yes, we deliver KPIs. It's important. I'm not saying we don't do that. But we also do innovation. And then we need to have a radar so that we know who to fight and where to take opportunities. And we need to have an accelerator so we can actually get on with building the innovations we need to make happen. And then this is what it looks like. It's an innovation portfolio. This is a really simplified version. You basically map out return. Oops, sorry, I'm a bit mad. You map out the return versus the risks. And you should be sitting down with your team and saying, okay, where are the projects where we can expect a high, medium, and low return? What are the risk structures of those projects? And you want to build a balanced portfolio. Going to what you were saying earlier, you shouldn't have all your innovations up here. Right? This is the big, bold stuff, but you should have a lot of small regular stuff coming through all the time. For example, Amazon. Amazon's success. Amazon started as a scrappy website selling books, secondhand books. Today it is the global titan, right? And so that doesn't make any sense, right? How do you go to do that? And it's because Amazon has built an innovation ecosystem. Basically, they have built an ability to constantly generate innovations. Small innovations like one-click buying, right? Amazon invented the fact that you press click once, and all your shipping and your payment details and all the blah blah is just sorted. It's extremely addictive, right? I know because I got addicted, right? So the second thing is that the fastest growing business unit in Amazon today is Amazon Web Services. What does that mean? Is Amazon is in the business of cloud computing. You've gone from selling books online to cloud computing, right? This is driving 40% of Amazon web growth. Amazon today has one of the fastest growing movie studios. Have you heard of Top Gear? Top Gear, the TV show, car show? Yeah, do you know where they're going to turn up? On Amazon. Jeremy Clarkson and co. will be on Amazon. And because Amazon say this, once you become an Amazon Prime customer, you get free books, free movies, free music, free content, free shipping, right? Ain't no one going to go to ASTRO's online store, right? Why would I go to ASTRO online store when I can get free movies and free shipping and every product on the planet, probably delivered by drones in the next 5 years? Right? This is the kind of stuff that you can't compete. I mean, they're killing Walmart, which was once the world's largest company. These guys are so far ahead of the game, it's incredible, right? If you build an effective innovation ecosystem, you will win. Because you can build better innovations faster than the competition, right? Obviously a simplified statement, but a true one nonetheless. The second thing is that we need leadapreneurs. Now, what is a leadapreneur? A leadapreneur is someone who confidently builds a better future by consistently leading agile innovation amongst disruption. What does that mean? It means you understand what a better future looks like, or you're talking about it, and you're working towards achieving it. You are leading agile innovation. It's not a buzzword. It's you're creating innovations, so new commercial realities. You're doing it quickly, agile, and you're leading the change, which means you're not just the person who, you know, some people have like innovation teams who create the ideas, and then they give it to someone else to do the idea, right? No, that doesn't work, right? Okay, because they just both end up hating each other, right? They hate each other. So instead, you have to follow it through all the way, right? From creating the idea to delivering and following up. And the reason why we think that the leadapreneurs are so relevant is, you know, this one of the quotes here from the 17th PwC CEO survey, where they want, you know, the key issue for leaders today is they can't find the right talent. They can't find leadapreneurs. We have lots of managers, lots of MBAs, but not people who can lead innovation. And so this is what a leadapreneur looks like as a specific framework. At their core, they lead agile innovation. How do they do that? They're using the skills of the entrepreneur. Okay? An entrepreneur is from the French verb entreprendre, which means to undertake actions. An entrepreneur originally was not someone who started their own business. They were simply someone who did stuff, right? And they created new ideas. And the key behavior of entrepreneurship is exploring the unknown to discover new opportunities, to discover new possibilities. So you're exploring the environment, you're scanning like the radar. You're like, oh, that's a cool idea. Oh, that's a cool idea. Why don't we combine those and create something new, right? And that's called then the minimum viable product. So you've created a new idea as an entrepreneur, and then you need to be a leader. You need to inspire people, right? McKinsey and IBM reckon about 60 to 70% of innovation projects fail. Why? Because people hate them, right? People don't want to change. They like the very comfortable situation they're in. Thank you very much. The real reason a lot of why management murders innovation is, you know, it's disruptive. It's inconvenient, right? It makes the political hierarchy sometimes look foolish. All these things. So you have to play the game of politics and inspire and engage people to support the innovation. And then you also need the skill of the manager. And yes, you know, I say it, management is an important skill, but it's one of 3 skills. It's one of 3 skills. If you manage everything, it's like only having a hammer and everything looks like a nail, right? You don't become very popular, right? So what you need to do is you need to have the skills of the entrepreneur, the ability to innovate, the skills of the leader to inspire, and the skills of the manager to drive results. Now here's the thing, guys. You don't need to be the best innovator. You don't need to be the most inspiring leader on the planet, right? And you don't need to be the best manager in the world. You just need to do them to a good enough standard, right? Just like you can drive, you can read, you can cook, some of you, right? That was a joke, right? This is what I'm saying, because when I say that, people are like, oh my God, it's so intimidating, it's so scary, right? But it's just, this is basic, these are skills you can learn. They're basic skills that we can learn. And then, we need to, if we do that well, we can be someone like my man hero. This is Elon Musk. He is the co-founder of PayPal. And then he sold PayPal for about $120 million and put his money into these 3 startups: rockets, electric cars, and solar panels. Very simply, right? And he really embodies the ability to create innovations, lead inspiring change, but also drive results and get it done. Okay, very remarkable man. So I think he is a very, for me, my role model in terms of how to actually make that happen. And then the third thing that we need is to learn, okay, what is the methodology? How do we do this, right? And so this is the simple thing. Instead of manage the KPI, you have to go through a journey. This is the specific thing you need to do differently. Step 1 is you need to create an exciting innovation. That's it. So how do you do that? You scan the environment, you look at what other people are doing, you steal their ideas, right? You combine them together, and then you have an exciting innovation. And if it's not exciting, keep doing that until it's exciting, right? Once you have an exciting innovation, you then get people to support your innovation, right? You can't just say, everyone, my idea is amazing, OMG, you know, take it, Instagram it, and then you know, pose, right? Okay, do that, and then get on with talking to other people, right? Okay? But honestly, it's really important because people, and understandably so, are scared of change, right? It's uncertain. What does it mean for me? Is it risky? Will I look foolish? What, you know, I don't know. So your job as a leader is to make them be inspired and engaged. So a manager would just say, hey, it's your job, do it. A leader would say, hey, this is going to make your job better. This is going to be exciting. You're going to help build things. It's, you know, I'm going to answer your questions and address your fears. I inspire you to support this innovation. So now you have an exciting idea, you got good support, deliver the results, right? You make it happen. And then you really aggressively do that. And once you've got to a certain level of, you know, consistency, you upgrade to the next level. So you're upgrading all the time, aggressively driving forward. And it's important to do this with a sense of urgency. So I recommend trying to do this every 12-week cycles, basically. 12 weeks on, 3 months, just go, 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 go. 1 month to recharge, refocus, you know, look at what went well, what didn't, jump in again, right? Make it happen. So this is the kind of speed and sense of urgency that we're talking about. So your innovation has been in the market by week 6. And so the reason why I'm sharing all of this for you guys is because I want you to know that this is something that comes from my own experiences. Like, this is my job. This is what I help companies do. And so I want to talk to you about this, not as a sales mechanism, but as a way to say, this is real, right? I am not talking about pie in the sky stuff. This is real results that I've been able to achieve. So for example, this is working with a microfinance institution, and doing that 12-week process, we created $512,000. Now, it wasn't me who said that, it was the company CEO who certified with signature that the innovations that they created in 12 weeks were 512,000 US, right? So it's about 2 million ringgit. That's what these people were able to achieve. And this is how you do it, okay? This is the journey you need to take people on to help them go through that. This is the specific things you need to do. There's 6 steps. Step 1 is you need to have a design stage. And the design stage is saying, okay, what are we trying to achieve? What kind of innovations do we want to do? What is the result we're trying to work towards? So you design the journey for the innovation team, and then you also engage individuals to say, why do you want to do this? Every person on your innovation team should know why they're doing this. It could be, I want to get a promotion, I want to look good in front of my boss, I want to learn these things, I'm excited by it, whatever. But you come out of the design phase knowing what your journey is going to be, right? And then secondly, you need to explore. You need to go out there and discover what is out there related to your journey, right? So let's say, okay, our objective is to try and find a new business model that could compete with iFlix. That's what we want to do. Okay, that's our design journey. Okay, so let's go out there and discover what exists in the world that could do that. So you then engage in a lot of research. Maybe you're flying around, you're going to meetings, you're online, but you're discovering what actually exists out there. It's called building your domain literacy. You're understanding what's going on. And then you create a whole bunch of different options, right? And you'll be sitting with your team and like, oh, these are all the cool ideas we have. Because they do exist, right? Disruptors are not indestructible. You just have to find their weakness. And then number 3, you focus in on which one of these cool ideas do we really desire to focus on, right? Let's say we create 20 different possibilities. Let's narrow that down to a short list of about 3. And then so that's the desire aspect, the focusing. And then we have the develop stage. And in the develop stage is, okay, so we know these 3 innovations could be really exciting. Let's develop an innovation project around them, right? How can we get basically what's called the minimum viable product, MVP, in entrepreneurship slang? What that basically means is, what is something you can get into the market as quickly as possible to test your idea, right? So if, for example, you're building an iPhone, you wouldn't build an iPhone, you build the basic crappy iPhone and see if it works, right? To give you an example of a great MVP, there's a company called Zappos. Has anyone heard of Zappos? Zappos is the Spanish word for shoe. It was started in America, and it was bought by Amazon by a fair few hundreds of millions of dollars a while ago. Okay, it was a huge, because actually selling shoes online makes a lot of sense, right? Because your shoe size never changes. So once you know your shoe size, you now have an infinite stock room, right? And they never say to you again, we're sold out. But anyway, do you know how this guy started? He went to a shoe shop, took a picture, went home, uploaded the picture onto eBay, and put it at the price of the shoe shop plus shipping. Okay, I kid you not, this is the true story. Someone bought the shoe, he then went to the money, right? Went to the shoe shop, bought the shoe, went to the post office, and sent it to his first customer, right? And what does that show? It shows that people will buy online. It shows that people, and so that was a proof of concept. And so he didn't build a website, he didn't buy shoes, he didn't do anything. And so that's the kind of thinking I'm talking about in terms of leading agile innovation, right? You're trying to, at the develop stage, think about how you can do that, and then you go in the deliver phase and do it, right? Actually get out in the market, try and put the picture online, try and get your first customer. Will someone buy this idea, this new innovation? It's not pretty, but it works. And then you present and describe your results and achievement at the end of the 12-week cycle. This is 12 weeks. And that is the learning moment, right? For example, let's say the guy didn't sell the shoe, right? Okay, well, why didn't we sell the shoe? Was it the bad photo? Were we using the wrong eBay platform? Were we not, you analyze the results, and then you do it again. Okay, now we design the next journey, right? So let's say you're talking about building an iFlix business model competitor. So you tested a few little ideas out, right? We analyze the results. Okay, now how can we build on this to go forward again? So you need a systematic and repeatable journey. And so you can do this again and again and again, right? You build on this journey, because the reality is that no one is going to create the innovation that is going to change ASTRO in 12 weeks. That's unlikely. But by consistently iterating the journey and building the ecosystem over time, it's like an innovation farm that you're growing, you can do it. And so what we need to do is think about how we do this in terms of you delivering to the company. You need to have a journey that can deliver fast results in 12 weeks. You need a journey that can help people become leadapreneurs, and you need something that will actually build the innovation portfolio, real results. I'm not talking about business plans, right? I'm not talking business plans. And so the way that we do this, we work with our clients and we help them achieve over 1 million ringgit of value as guaranteed for 1 year, right? So we can create for our clients 1 million value of innovation in 1 year. And so I share this with you because I want you to know it's possible. It's very possible. It's actually very straightforward. Okay? It's just about applying those things that I explained to you. So I've talked a lot. What I'd like to ask you guys is the following question. And so I want to give you 2 to 3 minutes to turn to the person next to you and ask, based on my sharing with you, do you think ASTRO will survive, thrive, or die in the next 10 years? Okay? So thrive means we're going to be awesome. Survive means we're just about holding on, right? Our share price is still the same. Okay, and die means we're either taken over or we've become irrelevant or we actually no longer exist. Now, a way to think about this is what is the rate at which the disruptors are growing, like iFlix, versus the rate at which ASTRO can change itself. This is the key thing to focus on. Which one is greater? So I'd like to give you guys 2 minutes to do that, and then let's see what the audience says. Is that okay? All right, go for it, guys. Turn to the person next to you and see what they say. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, because time is not on our side, would anyone like to share? Let's have a group poll, okay? Let's have a group poll. If you think that right now, ASTRO is going to thrive, and we're going to be awesome in the future, and everything is fantastic, put your hand up. You have to vote. Okay. Less than half the people in the room, okay? Less than half, right? Okay, if you think ASTRO will somehow survive, it will keep going, it's going to be, pretty much where it is today in 10 years' time. So that's 2026. Put your hand up. Okay, good. If there's some people who think that we're not going to make it. Okay, all right. Maybe there's people like, I actually think that, but we're filming, right? So, right. Okay. Okay, well, we have a good result here. So we're basically somewhere in the middle zone, right? And that's a shame because we have a great company and we have great people at this company. So why don't we take it further, right? And if you think about it, the way to take it further is going to be doing these three activities. Okay, we're going to have to do these three things. Number one is that we're going to need an inspiring innovation vision and a believable innovation strategy, right? Something that is actually going to beat iFlix, right? Something that is actually going to beat Netflix and take ASTRO forward. So this is one thing that we could do. The other thing we could do is build a disruptor radar. Build a team of people who are scanning the environment. They're not creating the innovations, but they're identifying what are the threats. Who are the people and how will they impact our business model? You should be modeling where is iFlix going to be in 3 years' time, right? Because iFlix is what, 1-2 years old right now? So if you remember my graph, it's year 5 and 6 when everything blows up, right? And guess what they're trying to do, right? They're trying to get there. And so maybe it might not be iFlix, it might be someone else, but we need a radar to understand what's going on, right? Otherwise we're blind. And then we also need an accelerator. We need a program, a process to help leverage the internal talent and also connect to the external talent. ASTRO should invest or buy the startup in KL that becomes iFlix's competitor, right? So let's have a quick show of hands. I would like to see which ones do you think, you have to choose one, should the company focus on first? Because we can't do all at the same time, right? So if you have to make a choice, which one should ASTRO do first, I'd like you to vote accordingly. This will be number 1, this will be number 2, this will be number 3. Does that make sense? So if you think that the first thing we need to do is build an innovation vision, put your hand up. Okay, a few people. If you think we need a disruptor radar, put your hands up. About half. And then if we think we need an accelerator, put your hand up. Okay, that's about a third. So I think this was the majority. This was second, and then a few people focusing on this. So this gives you some idea of what maybe it's worth focusing on, right? This is really easy to do. Right? This is literally a coffee break, get some people you like working with together, fire up a laptop, and start seeing what's out there. Right? There's a whole industry around serving insights. For example, one thing you can write down is CBS Insights. A company like yourself probably has a subscription to them, or should get one, and that will give you a lot of the data that you need. Ooh. So this comes to the end of the presentation. It's been a real journey. I hope you found it different, exciting. I hope you've also found it maybe a little bit scary, like I said, but fear is a good thing, right? You use fear to get out of your comfort zone and go forward. And I hope that I've been able to provide you with a way to go forward. But the basic message is this. It is, in the age of disruption, it's innovate or die. It's innovate or die. And I think that unless a company like ASTRO, which still seems to be stuck in the industrial management model, unless it transitions to the innovation ecosystem in the next few years, I mean, for me, we're really talking the next 3 years, you will not have the velocity to keep up with the competition. It'll be too slow. It'll be like BlackBerry. You figure it out too late. Because they're already out there and more are coming on their way. And the way in which we can do that is we can build innovation ecosystems, those 3 things I talked about. It's about building the leadapreneurs, and it's about making this a reality. So thank you very much, everyone. It's been a real pleasure. So if you'd like to contact me, you're very welcome to email me. Also, we're very active on social media. We put out a lot of updates about new innovations coming through, so we help people. If you want to know, I always post links and stuff to new ideas, new cool stuff coming out. And if there's anyone who'd like to ask any questions, obviously I'm very happy to do that right now.
Let's say the broadband is taken out for the country, how many companies can survive?
From fiber optic broadband? Because right.
Companies that survive currently are doing very well.
Yes.
It's somehow or other based on the internet base.
Yes, on the internet infrastructure, yes.
So if that's not there, then the chances of these companies surviving, especially Facebook and all the others, chances
Yes.
are very slim, right?
But it is there, right? Right? And it's like a utility. And this is actually a big problem for telecommunications companies because they're just becoming dumb pipes. Right? Water. You have water, electricity, and internet. That's all it is. And actually, if you want to talk about real disruption, recently SpaceX had a rocket blow up. I don't know if you heard about that. Right? One of their rockets blew up in the launch. Do you know what that satellite was? Do you know what satellite was carrying? It was carrying the first of Facebook's internet satellites. Because you know what Facebook is going to do? Facebook is working to bathe the world in free internet. Why would Facebook do that? Because if it costs Facebook, for example, $30 billion to build a satellite fleet, but Facebook has, right now, 1.8 billion users monthly, and will probably get to 2 or 3 billion users, all it needs to do is monetize each user for $10. And I can do that as Facebook. And I own everything. This is going to come in the next decade. Like, this is in the Facebook plan. And SpaceX are also going to launch their computing system. So this is the kind of thing. This is why part of the telcos and the banks right now are really scared. Because this kind of stuff is coming through. And this is what I mean by that nonlinear disruption, right? Because, okay, we'll cut the fiber optic. We have it beams out of the sky, right? And of course, you need receiver stations on the ground to like clean it up and stuff. That's part of what I mean by we have to learn how to encounter novel situations, right? Build the intelligence to say, oh my gosh, Facebook is beaming free internet from the sky. That's a new thing, right? How do we deal with this? And as I've shown you, the way you deal with it is through intelligence. You have to have the intelligence that can solve the problem. If you don't have the intelligence, you won't solve it in time. Any other questions? Yes?
In the earlier chart you had, not the 100. In the earlier chart you had a diagram where it had 100% and 1, and then it grew exponentially 1
Yes.
4.8. That is assuming there's just one company against one competitor. But there could be others in the background, and they could eat into the market as well, yes?
Yes, and this is a great point, right? Where, so he's mentioning when I showed the incumbent being attacked by the disruptor, the black and blue graphs, right? So it's a very simplified version, you're right. So let's look at what happened to mobile phones, right? The incumbent was Nokia, right? Nokia owned 45% of the mobile phone market globally, right? And BlackBerry had the sexy sort of 10, 15%. But it wasn't Apple that beat Nokia. It was the Android platform, right? It was Samsung, it was HTC, it was Xiaomi, it was Huawei, it was everyone else. And so, but you're right, and so sometimes they can compete with each other, but often it's these new paradigm attackers. So it's basically like if you imagine you're being colonized, it's not just the Spanish coming over, it's the Spanish and the British and the Germans and the Russians and the French and everyone else, which actually happened to the world 100 years ago, right? And so the point is, it's actually even worse. Because as the incumbent, you're just sitting there as a big fat target. And all these hungry sharks are circling around saying, hey, I really want a piece of that, right? And some of them are going to go really big, like Netflix, but the others are still in play, right? And so that is a key issue. And so I think, one of the things that you can do about that is, it's not all doom and gloom, guys, right? Like, as an incumbent, you have a lot of assets. You have brand, you have customers, you have money, right? For all their amazingness, disruptors have a lot of weaknesses. They don't have a lot of money, right? And so you can think about it like this, going back to that idea, why didn't ASTRO buy iFlix? Why didn't ASTRO? Because Blockbuster laughed Netflix out of the room, right? This is a true story. Netflix went to Blockbuster and said, would you like to buy us for $100 million? And they literally laughed them out of the room, right? And now Netflix is $40 billion, right? And so the point is, ASTRO should be in the VC game, right? You need to have two things. You need to have an internal innovation capability, because you've got a lot of talent here and you need to use that. And you need to have an external innovation capability. You should be scanning, because out of those sharks, right? Why don't you just become friends with them? Say, don't attack me, I'll invest in you, I'll make you my friend, right? And I'll buy you. And now the shark's fighting for you. And if you look at what's happening in the financial services sector, right? So that's where we do a lot of our work for the banks. And it's a $10 trillion industry. So this is the crazy fact. Like all this disruption, all these companies I've told you about, they're about $2 trillion, right? It's a fifth of the $10 trillion financial service industry. And that whole game is going to change. 10 years from now, a lot of us won't be using banks, right? It's going to be blockchain technology. It's going to be a whole bunch of crazy, crazy stuff that's coming through. It's insane. And what the banks are realizing, the smart ones, is that we can't fight them all. So let's do partnerships, joint ventures. Let's work with these people. Instead of making them attack us, let's collaborate with them. And that way we can turn it around, right? So this is a really important insight, is that it doesn't have to be this you versus them mindset. It can be a very collaborative space. And the innovation ecosystem I was talking about becomes that, right? The line between ASTRO and the startup, it blurs. And so you have a partnership with, let's say, for example, you have partnership with universities, you have partnership with incubators around the country, you're scanning the environment, you're bringing people in. Some of them work for you. Like for me, and a company, this is what a company should really do, right? You have the company, and you have an incubator, right? Now, what's happening is this. You're trying to bring talent into the company to work for you. That's traditional. You're trying to find companies you want to buy, and they become your partners, supplying technology and leadership and all kinds of good stuff. But you also have a big problem that, as I said earlier, the really good innovative talent usually leaves the company because they can make more money on their own. So instead of fighting that, help them. Say, okay, you want to leave? It's really hard being an innovator on your own. Tell you what, we'll give you free rent at our startup incubator, and we'll invest in you if your idea works. So now you're an employee who's really frustrated, but suddenly could get an offer to say, you know, ASTRO will take a 10% equity stake, for example, but you get all the support of ASTRO. That could be a really good deal, right? How much would that cost for ASTRO to do? Nothing. Because now you still have money, right? And you still have brand, but maybe not in 10 years' time, right? Or what if iFlix did that, right? And so it's going to be a lot about who can build that superior innovation ecosystem, who can attract the ideas and talent to come collaborate with them. And I think it's about thinking differently. It's not about just putting more money on the table. Yeah. Any other last questions? Great. Okay. Thank you so much for your time, everyone. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.